Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host Tony Cañas, and today I have with me Jane Vevea, and today's one of my favorite kinds of episodes, a career episode. So Jane, how's it going today?
It's going really well. It's really nice and beautiful here in Texas. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we are
How's it going for
recording
you?
December 11th, and I'm doing well. Thank you. Quick stop at my native Costa Rica for a few days. Uh, and we met in at ITC Las Vegas, uh,
Hmm.
and started a conversation basically uh, on kind of your history and your career. Uh, and I thought it was an interesting one. So and career episodes are some of my favorites because the younger generation falls into insurance and has no idea the different opportunities and how to get there. So I love capturing the stories and capturing the advice. Uh, so how did you get started in our crazy industry?
So I think falling into it is the perfect way to explain it. I was a theater major in college, and I was actually when I left college, I had a really hard time finding a position. So I was working at a coffee shop, like a regional coffee chain, and I was managing that coffee shop. And I was working ungodly hours for next to no pay. And my sister at the time had been working at Prudential, and she said, there's a call center job open and it pays exactly what you're making, and you only have to work 37 and a half hours a week, and you should come and try to work this job and it will pay the same. And so that's how I got into life insurance. So I went from tap dancing and doing makeup and stage work to working on life insurance retention and life insurance products. So I started my career in reverse sales. It was very, very interesting.
Okay, so very important the theater major piece. So in insurance, about 10% of us, 10 to 15% of us come with a risk management degree. About I don't know 40% come with just a business degree, general business degree, and then the other 40 or so percent, it's basically we're the island of misfit toys. With people from all sorts
Sure.
of psychology, philosophy, history, anthropology, theater, art history, all those, and they tend to they tend to make some really interesting. Some of my favorite insurance people have all sorts of random backgrounds. So the your sister's case for hey, same money, less hours,
Yeah.
it made perfect sense. Okay, but now having spent some time in the call center myself, when I see the word retention, that is not the easiest side of the call center, right? Because I'm guessing you were trying to keep people from lapsing their coverage.
Yeah, lapsing or surrendering. So on average for 5 years, I talked to about 32 clients a day. And a lot of the conversations started off like, I hate you. I hate this contract. I want out of it. I want the money. And so my responsibility was to try to, really listen to the needs of the clients first and foremost, and then determine if keeping that contract was possible based on what they were discussing, the reason as to why they wanted to, get the money out of the contract or cancel the contract, and see if there's a way to salvage that contract, save that contract, or even look for that client to switch or change their contract. Like maybe they were in something permanent and they couldn't afford it, and so maybe we could change to like a term insurance or something like that for a life insurance, all in 12 minutes or less. Because a call center environment, they have a handle time, and they want you on in and off the call. So it was a very interesting introduction into life insurance. It was sort of like, you know, I think I talked in the first year to more people than, career agents would talk to in maybe 5 years or 10 years of their lifetime. And all of that Prudential product, I mean, at the time, I was probably looking back to anything that was from the early 1900s to whatever was being sold in 2006 when I started in the industry. So it's really interesting to kind of see different products and kind of really start paying attention to how products evolved in life insurance over time.
That is super interesting, because um, you're right. You while it is an entry level job, and one where I'm guessing the majority of people only last a couple of years and then they leave the industry unless the company is doing something really, really, really good to help them grow. it does give you great exposure, right? So my first job was in the Express Claims Call Center at Farm Bureau of Iowa, and the beautiful thing was that claims came in for all lines of business. I kept only the very simple ones, but I saw all the different lines of business. So you had kind of that same thing, but you had to be proficient enough at the different things that the company did to be able to kind of guide people into moving into the right product. But also you got to see the old products that were no longer being sold, but were still on the books. And in life insurance, it's a very, very long tail, right? You literally might be looking at products that haven't been sold for 30 years and are still on the books. So how, I'm glad that you were one of the ones, I'm guessing the minority, that didn't burn out, that grew. How did you
Yeah.
manage to grow? Like growing the call center is not easy.
I think for me, my passion was around theater. So I wanted to get up on the stage. And so the way that I saw that transpiring was I was actually really good at retention. I was remarkably good at retention. And what's interesting is the phone calls were 100% monitored and recorded. So the company was like, I think doing an average of around 30% saves or something at that time when I was there. And I was averaging like 50 to 55%. So they were like, Spidey signal, like this lady's probably, is it okay what she's doing? We better listen to her calls, right? And then after they listened to my calls, they were like, oh, we think she's on to something. Maybe we can have her train people. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, yes, I want to get off the phone because who in a call center wants to be on a phone? And I thought, yeah, I want to train because it's a stage, right? So I can get up and learn some lines and get up there. And I looked at it to the things that I was interested in doing. And so I started training. We had a retention staff of about 55 people, I believe, at that time. And I started training our retention staff, and I brought the retention of the entire staff up from 30 to about 35%. And then after that, they just started giving me more and more highly sensitive projects, just different higher valued clients, more complicated contracts to work on, illustration responsibilities, 1035 exchange response, just adding to the responsibility because they knew that they could trust me and that I was going to, do a really good job for them.
Okay, so that early in your career, it do the job well. What do the job really well? What was good enough
Yeah.
to get noticed?
Yeah. And so after I started training people, the next thing that I did to get noticed was I started noticing like illustration anomalies and different things like that, pattern recognition, and when they were putting me on sensitive projects, I started to sort of develop insights and different things. And then the 2008 market crash happened. And that's really where I shined. We were on mandatory overtime during that time in the call center because as you can imagine, the market had dropped and people just wanted to cancel their life insurance because they needed money. Maybe they lost all their money in the dot-com bubble or housing or whatever it was that they lost their money, but it was unprecedented. I mean, all of my friends were getting laid off and we were on mandatory overtime. So it was a great place to be at that moment, instead of getting laid off like my sister or my friends. But it was
Mm-hmm.
really intensive. And one of the largest products that Prudential had a component to it that was tied to the market. And these poor people who happened to have a premium change that was subject to being tied to the market at that time, they were getting, really difficult sort of illustrations at that point. And there needed to be something that needed to be done. So I did some research and I talked to the illustrations department and I was like, hey, we can't service these clients unless we can illustrate like a negative rate of return. Because at that point, the market was like 40%, negative or something. And our illustration capabilities could only do zero. So I made a business case for, changing the illustration system. And that really got me a lot of uh, exposure to hire people in the industry. I think that was also aided too because I was lucky enough to have Chuck Anderson, who's a mentor of mine and just a really decent, wonderful human being. And he was kind of a theater guy. And what was really interesting is he would do these sort of shows, if you will, in the cafeteria, but he also did them at like LIMRA or NALBA conferences too. And so I looked at him and I didn't look at him as like somebody who was high up in the company. I looked at him as like somebody who was doing theater, and I wanted to do theater too inside of my work, again, trying to get off the phone call. So I had the courage to get up to ask him, like, hey, I want to sing and dance too. Can I come do this with you? And had no idea who he was. And it just turned out that he was kind of a big deal. And so, with that exposure that I had with him, because I wanted to sing and dance in the cafeteria like everyone else, and then, subsequently with this exposure to the illustration software change, it definitely got me noticed. And so I think it was just sort of fate or serendipity that these were the things that I was interested in, and these people were put in my path that were also important.
So I think there's some good lessons there. Uh, don't be afraid to nerd out in your product, right? To really learn it, to really dig into it, and to ask the questions. Like you had the guts to ask the questions for why can't this illustrate the realities of the current market, and to let people know, because the leadership isn't on the phone every day. They're
No.
right. If you're going through an unprecedented time like 2009, they've never seen this, right? Whoever made the
Yeah.
decision on the specs for the illustrations software, the illustration package, had never had to deal with this, and they'll never know that it's needed until somebody on the front lines raises their hands and goes like, "Hey, this we don't have what we
Yeah.
need anymore."
Yeah. And I think the
And
lesson,
then also have.
oh, I was going to say, I think the further lesson in that too is like, not only not being scared to bring it up, but not being scared to put it together. Like I put together a really quick PowerPoint with an explanation, and I didn't have a business use case. I think people think they have to have all the information to make a business use case, but I didn't have a full like use case. I just had enough pieces of information that I could provide to somebody to say, we need to move this forward. And I put it together in like a reasonable way.
Okay, and you didn't have formal education on business presentations, that how to put together a proposal.
No, no. I mean, I knew how to put together a PowerPoint from theater or whatever, like anyone else, like for a project or something at school, but not a business use case. No, I'd never done anything like that before.
Okay, um, so you kept growing at Prudential, did some training,
Hmm.
ended up in a regional marketing specialist role. What
Yeah.
and you did that one for a good while. You relocated for that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So
So
Prudential
how
just,
was that time?
yeah. So Prudential decided that they had captured agents at the time, and that was their largest, agency distribution was their largest field force. And they decided they needed someone basically to go out and train and market to anyone who was newly hired to Prudential to sell life insurance and annuities. But they specifically wanted someone who was focused on life insurance. So I applied. I was the first ever regional marketing specialist for Prudential. I liked the California territory because I'm from Minnesota, and Minnesota was still in that territory. So I covered 18 states, everything Minnesota, Iowa, and West, for them. So I spent a lot of time in an airplane. I was like up in the air for a very long time, like that movie. It was really awesome. I got to go to the front of the house. So I went from retention, to the front of the house to sales, and I worked with anybody who was new to Prudential. So they didn't necessarily have to be new to life insurance, but they had to be new to Prudential, 0 to 4 years. Most of my agents or my financial professionals were new to Prudential, but I got to do things like seminars. Again, things that were really fun for me as a theater person was doing seminars that were prepackaged and prepared by Prudential, but we could get up and do them for the benefit of the agent. I got to do things like teach them about how the products work and the systems, the software, how to run the CRM, like how to really talk to clients and how to really inform clients of the benefits of the life insurance products that Prudential had on the platform. And then recognize that Prudential wasn't always the right fit for those clients too, so where does Prudential products fit versus where does some other carrier come in, because it doesn't matter that you have products, they may not be the right fit, right? You need to sell what's right by the client. And then
Mm-hmm.
a lot of like marketing, prospecting, and just really helping them be successful in their first 4 years at Prudential. And remarkably, I was quite good at this job. My retention rate for 0 to 4 years was better than the industry average. I believe the industry average at the time was 75% of all reps would leave within 4 years, and mine was only 70%. So, I had about a 5% better retention rate of those reps, but it still was, it's still like a high turnover rate. So you're still teaching the same thing over and over again. And then through that, the reason I stayed in that so long is they changed the position somewhere in the middle when Prudential acquired Hartford. They decided that the regional marketing specialist position wouldn't just be for new people that were captured to Prudential. They really wanted us to go out and work with other distribution channels. So I ended up working with distribution channels like Edward Jones, Wells Fargo, LPL Financial, just different ways that Prudential went to market with their life insurance. So it was really interesting. It was always constantly changing who the agents were, who the clients were. And what the solutions potentially would be for those clients, and just coming up along those agents, and if Prudential was the right solution, really helping them design that contract and make sure that it was the right fit, and helping it get from application to placement, and then servicing it along the way as well.
Okay. You haven't yet mentioned CLU, which it looks like you did it in 20. So I think you did it kind of around the time that you were in that role.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so what
started.
got you thinking of CLU, and how was that experience?
So the natural transition from regional marketing specialist would have been like a regional vice president, which is what we would call like, a traditional wholesaler. And the big difference between a marketing specialist and a traditional wholesaler, in my opinion, is the size of the case and the complexity of the case. So more estate planning, more business succession planning, just much more complicated uh, sales. And we say that life insurance sales are like a three-legged stool. They involve the producer or the agent. They involve the attorney, and then a lot of times they'll involve the CPA, right? And when we get in these more complicated types of um, uh, sales, then you need all three of those tools, but you also need to be able to speak to them. So the more and more you learn about life insurance, what's really interesting is the more and more you learn about taxes, and the more and more you learn about taxes and life insurance, the more and more you learn about trusts and estate planning and those types of things. So I started my CLU designation with the design to move into that RVP position. But somewhere along the way, I got married, I got pregnant with a baby. My mom got diagnosed with a couple of cancers and then subsequently was passing away. And I somehow moved to Texas in there. And so it took a lot longer than I ever anticipated it taking because of all of those life sort of happens. But I finished it, and I was determined to finish it. I think it's really important for me to note, probably to my own detriment, that like in college, I wasn't required to take any math. I had to take like a logic and critical reasoning. So I hadn't really had any math since like junior year of high school. And then I went into the CLU, and it was frustrating. It was really difficult for me to do like standard deviations and to do compounded, like annuity calculations and these sorts of different things. But I overcame all that. And I'm intelligent enough to pass it even without a background in it. So it was really exciting, and it made me feel really accomplished to get to the end of that CLU.
I've got to vouch for you on that one where I did 26, 27 tests in a row, got CPCU, got a bunch of other designations. CLU is the one that got me to stop. I I made it to the first test, and halfway through the second, I'm like, yeah, this is a lot of math. I have an MBA and everything, it was, yeah. So lots of respect for passing CLU, especially without an academic business background before. Yeah, you didn't have any of the math you needed, basically.
Yeah, I did when I worked at the regional coffee shop. I did get sent to coffee college, which is like basically like management school or like learning how to manage a business. But it was nothing it was just like, plugging into their Excel spreadsheet. So I really had no background to where I started to where I got to. And I'm extremely, again, I'm just so extremely proud of myself for finishing it.
Has it been a difference maker for your career?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think it's exposed me to obviously better planning, to working with my clients. And it's definitely given the clients that I've worked with over my career better experience, and it's better taking care of them. But as far as my career is concerned, I think it's given me two things. Obviously, a bunch of knowledge that I would not have had without doing this type of work. And I think that's the most important, is that knowledge is in my mind. But I think it also opens doors, because it shows, just like a college degree or something, it shows that you're able to complete something. And then it shows that, you have a level of knowledge that other people don't have, right? So right off the bat, it gives like a trust factor or a trust indicator to anyone who you're working with. So I think it's well worth the exercise, even if someone's not, even if they're having a difficulty with it, if that makes sense.
Okay, stick to it. Um, so after years of flying around the upper Midwest and West Coast, what led to finally leaving Prudential?
Pony, I'm sorry. 1 second. There's an alarm going off. I have to shut it off. Hold on 1 second. I apologize. I'm sorry, Tony. Okay.
No worries.
So wait, what did you say now?
So I was saying, so after the 6 years in the training role that had you flying all over the place, what led to finally leaving Prudential after being there for almost 12 years?
Oh, well, when I was working towards my CLU, one thing that I became obsessed with is really giving clients the best advice that I possibly could at that time. And I'm really like a best interest type of person. Like, I've always been that way, even before the regulation came about. And that one of the frustrations that I had working for just a direct carrier was selling away. Like, I would love the client, but I would meet them and I would know, like, I don't know, at the time when we were selling like Prudential and like marijuana, just an example. So I'd be like, oh, you're smoking marijuana. Well, you got to go to somebody else. You can't go to Prudential. And I found that very, very frustrating. So I found an opportunity at a bank to actually be an insurance specialist, and come up alongside their financial professionals and help them with advanced planning and life insurance. But I had the gamut of whatever product I would be wanting. And then I also had the influence to say to the bank, hey, if we have this case and we need this product, and then the bank, if we could get it, we would bring it on the platform, because we would make a recommendation to say, hey, this is something we need for the client. So that for me was the impetus of change. It had nothing to do with dissatisfaction in my career or anything like that. It was just wanting to know more products from more carriers and really wanting to service the client where they are.
Okay. Then you go to White Swan, which I'm guessing is an Insurtech?
It is. It is an Insurtech. They're online seller of life insurance direct to consumer. My bank got bought out by a larger bank, and they laid us off because their insurance specialists were all located on the East Coast. And this is the first time in my career I had ever went through anything like this. And I was very interested in the intersection of blockchain and life insurance at the time when I got laid off. And I decided, I've been doing servicing, selling, retention for long enough. I'm really interested in policy. I'm really interested in different ways you could potentially go to market, like direct to consumer through the internet. I was just really interested in other things that I hadn't done before, but specifically in the technology space, because I really do see that that's where the future is. And White Swan was one of the places that wanted to give me a shot, that I thought was pretty interesting what they were doing, going direct to consumer with all products, and really trying to service the client, sort of coming up alongside. We had agents that were there, so it wasn't just a point and click like an Ethos or something like that might be, but you could talk to someone directly who could help you with your planning if you wanted to. But then all of the suites of products were available there from all of the carriers. Again, unlike maybe some of the other insurtechs that are out there that may only have proprietary products, or that may only offer term insurance or something like that. You really could get the gamut at White Swan. And then White Swan led me to Dot because I was curious on, I've always been curious on retention and lapse prevention since that's where I started. And I found Atadot was doing this type of work. And I thought at White Swan, how could we work with them, work with Atadot? And so I just sort of was a fangirl of Atadot, and they posted a position. And I thought, you know what, that really feels like that should be where I should go to, because I have all of this retention experience and I have all of this lapse prevention experience. And that was their bread and butter of where they started and where they were focusing. So I thought, I bet I could do something with them and I could provide some type of insight. And my leading guiding purpose has always been that all of this knowledge that's in my head shouldn't just be available to the people who talk to Jane Vevea. It really should be available to anyone who wants that knowledge. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to download the Jane brain, that's what my husband calls it, download the Jane brain so that other people can have access to the information that I have.
What was it like to going from gigantic companies to tech startups? And what advice do you have for people looking at making that move?
Oh, for me, it was a very scary transition. I stayed at large companies most of my career because I didn't have a fallback. I grew up on, relatively, my mom was a single mom. She didn't really have support that she could provide financially. So I wasn't able to make a lot of, you know, um, I don't know what you call them, but riskier moves. So for me, the larger companies and the banks, they provided stability, they provided regular paychecks, they provided health insurance, these
Hmm.
types of things. Now the place that I'm in right now, when you go to a startup, you might lose some of those benefits, right? So I'm in a healthy place right now in my life. I've lost like 180 pounds in my life. So I'm not in the same place as when I started, and I'm in a healthier place now.
Whoa.
Um, I think there's some other really interesting factors. Like now I'm married with my husband and my son. I've had a successful career. We had our son late in life. But I have a nest egg. Like I have money saved up. I have resources available to myself that I've created for myself that allow me that flexibility to maybe be in a famine situation where you're not making money for a good amount of time, which that wasn't something that was afforded to me at the beginning of my career. I had to make money every 2 weeks to pay my own rent. And, I didn't have someone paying my bills or helping me with anything ever, or even help with my college. So for me, it was more of a calculation of security for the beginning of my career. But now I'm in a place where I can make a lot more riskier intention moves. I think everything's a lot quicker in a startup, and you're not just focused only on
Hmm.
your role in a startup. I think that's probably the biggest, most exciting thing to me is the amount of ways that you can contribute in a startup it's like it's more than being like an octopus, but it's like you're spreading your tentacles around every sort of facet of the company versus like when you're with a big company, it's kind of like know your role, do what you do, and then maybe every now and again you can branch out if you want to. But with a startup, if you have something to contribute, you can contribute in marketing and sales and product design and just any way that you can contribute, and people are welcoming it because you're a very lean organization and you don't have a lot of people working for you. There's one other thing too that I would say. I think that working for a startup is really interesting because it's a flat organization and you have access to senior leadership on a daily basis. Um, Almost the entire time that I worked for Pru, I never
Hmm.
once got to meet the CEO of Prudential, which I thought was pretty interesting. Since I worked there so long and I dealt with so many clients, but because it's such a huge organization, a lot of that senior leadership you don't get exposed to unless you've worked your way up those rungs because they're so high. And so I think probably that's my favorite part is people might see something
Hmm.
in you that you don't know that's in there because they look at you from a different angle, and so they can really extract things in a startup environment that maybe your other employer wouldn't have even known to extract from you because they were too large.
Yeah. I don't know. By definition, at a large company, you're kind of a number. You have to be. The way that they can't manage that many people with any sort of customization, with any sort um, of paying close attention to what other skills you might have that could be useful for the company.
I absolutely.
Hello,
Oh,
hello.
I'm
Can
still
you
here.
still hear
Yeah,
me?
I was just waiting to see if you had another question.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Um, Perfect. So big company to Insurtech. Um, what else do you wish you had known early on when you first stumbled into insurance like the rest of us?
I wish I would have known that senior leadership wasn't so unapproachable. And I wish I wouldn't have been so scared. They're just like us. Most people are just like us. You know, there are some jerks out there, I guess you could say. But for the most part, I think senior leadership is just as hungry for connection with people, even at the lower levels, as the people at the lower levels are hungry for connection with people at the upper levels. So I wish I wouldn't have been as scared to reach out to people, to say like, "Hey, what do I do? Like, how could I advance, or what are some opportunities?" I think the other thing is like job shadowing or really understanding what the opportunities are. Um, my husband is a transportation planner, and I didn't even know that job existed until I met him. It makes all the sense in the world that someone plans transportation. But if you didn't know that that career was an actual opportunity, how would you know whether or not that interested you? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think the other thing, I think the other thing besides, like looking around and interning or anything like that is not thinking you're dumb at something. I don't know another way to put that except for that way, because I never really thought of myself as good at math or even economics or anything like that. In fact, my mom had kind of instilled at me that economics was really scary for her when she went to college, and she hated it. So she directed me away from it. And my husband has a BA in economics. And one of the things we talk about every day is economics, and I'm fascinated with it. And I really wish my mom had not discouraged me from that, because I think that if I had to do it all over again, I would have loved to have gone back and been a data scientist or an economist, because I'm really fascinated in predictive analytics, but I'm also really fascinated in why people do what they do with their money based on, all of that myriad of factors that makes up their life. So I think challenging yourself, or not being scared to challenge yourself, is really important, because you might not know what you like until you're exposed to it, or what you could be good at.
So taking a look at yourself with an open mind. Uh, what do you think, because you've been told, might not be accurate?
Oh, wow. Um, I think there's a lot of things like, I didn't think I was good at math, and I definitely think now I'm good at math. I think that my dad had made a comment like, I have four sisters, so that's also important in the story. But my dad had made a comment like, "What kind of job are you going to get with a theater major?" And I have a thriving career now. So I think like some of those things where people said like, what like, again, going back to what my dad said, like, what's theater going to do for you? It has all relevant skills. I mean, you learn presentations, memorizations, especially for sales. You learn about different people types and motivations, and what motivates those people and why they make the decisions that they make. And then you also learn how to research people too. Like I learned, in acting, like if you're going to play, I don't know, whoever, right? You have to research that person. Like, where are they from? What was their upbringing? And if the play or the story doesn't tell you, you have to make that up, right? And I think all of those things are applicable to sales and those types of things. So I think it's maybe not so much as what people told you couldn't do, it's what people said was dumb that you were doing. And it actually really ended up being smart and working to my advantage. I came out of college knowing how to do all kinds of crazy things, like you do computer aided drafting, video production, just things that you wouldn't think you're going to use at a job. But now look at how um, those things are with the advent of social media and those types of things since I've left college, just how all of those skills are
Mm-hmm.
relevant and important. So even though you think you might not have the skill set, you might be really surprised what skills you actually maintain. I think the other thing that I would say too is being young in this business in 2006, and being like looking like this, like looking like an attractive, well, I would like to think I'm attractive, like attractive, a female and being very young, people might write you off and think that, you know, you don't have a knowledge base or you don't have anything to contribute because they might think of you as dumb or blonde or, you know, like these kind of like maybe things that people think. Um, or they might get off the face of looking at you. But I think you have to hold true to yourself. And I think that you have to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, really dig your heels in and pick those opportunities to express your intelligence at every opportunity and continually remind people that looks are not, I mean, they are, unfortunately, they are important for sales if you're doing any kind of sales where someone's seeing your face. But, you know, you're more than just the way that you look. You're the sum of everything you've learned, but you're also the sum of the things you're willing to learn, and you're also the sum of your attitude, and then your gratuity with other people, like how thankful you are and how appreciative you are of the things that you're going through. So, yeah, I think that's everything.
In our industry, especially, uh, historically, if you're not a 6 foot tall white male, you're you know not the average uh, insurance salesperson. So not being afraid to give it your all, not being afraid to jump in on the opportunities, even if you're the only female or the only person of color or whatever in the room. Find those mentors that can help you grow. It is definitely
Oh
doable.
yeah. There's been plenty of times that I've been in a room like 200 people and I've been one of like 5 women or one of 10 women and those kind of things. But I think like anything else, you can definitely find the people who are your champions and you can find the people who are aligned to you and stick yourself next to that person and make sure that they're there to help you. But I think the other thing that's very important is to give your power away. And when you recognize that you have power and you recognize that you can help someone else with that power, to extend that as much as you can, so that you can make a easier road for the person that's coming up alongside of you or the person that's coming behind you on the next tranche, right?
100%. A huge part of my career has been quite simply paying back the great advice and help that I got along the way.
Or the advice to not do something. Yeah, the great advice or the great advice to not do something. Yeah, to do or to not do. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. It really is great to see how you've grown that career. And yeah, from a theater major, uh, without you know any leg up on the way in, without any existing connections on the way into having made a fantastic career, it really shows how there are great opportunities in our industry for those that are willing to put in the work.
Yeah, and it's a great option for anyone. I really encourage everyone if they're passionate about people to just get involved because it's such a great industry to be in if you really care about people.
Absolutely.